All right, I hereby call this hearing of the Government Administration Elections Committee to order. Any remarks from my ranking or co-chairs? Seeing none, we will go straight to the testimony. First up, we have Margaret Miner. Ms. Miner, I see you in the Zoom. If you can unmute and turn your camera on if possible, you can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
There I am. Okay. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Margaret Miner with Rivers Alliance of Connecticut. Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and ranking members of the committee. I'm a consultant now with Rivers Alliance, former executive director, and I've worked on conveyance bills for over 20 years, often as a volunteer for CTLCV, where I'm a board member, and in the Water Planning Council as co-chair with Karen Bernoska of the Watershed Lands Group. I've submitted testimony on bills 1249, a conveyance to Cheshire, and 1248, a conveyance to East Haddam. I particularly want to thank the leadership and staff of the committee for making changes in the conveyance process that this year, for the first time, has made it possible for the public to see essential details of proposed conveyances early enough to review the proposals. In particular, Senator Flexer and committee clerk Valentina Meti responded generously to requests from the Water Planning Council and advocates for more vital details, including certain land uses, and we specifically asked for information on aquifer protection areas. You have a requested APA conveyance to Cheshire on your agenda today, 1249, and our position and the position of many advocates is that aquifer protection areas the default position should be, if they are protected, do not open them up to more problems. Leave them be, leave them alone. Connecticut's, we do not have very many APAs. Connecticut's water future for healthy communities and an economy depends on our remaining high quality, uncontaminated water in the ground. We don't know how much water that is, but it's obviously not increasing. I put reasons for this in my testimony, and equally important reasons for protecting land proposed for conveyances that has valuable natural resources. As for the aquifer protection regulations, people often assume, well, we have regulations that will protect the aquifer. Back in 1987 and 1987, the legislature outlined its vision for aquifer protection and passed the first aquifer protection law. It was a broad law for all public groundwater sources, including future sources. I have quotes from my testimony. It called for consistent and effective state regulation. What we have now in 2024, the best we could do is a regulation that covers very limited areas and very limited activities. They exist only for public drinking water wells in gravel soil serving 1,000 or more residents. They do not cover smaller well fields, public bedrock aquifers, or known future water sources. The regulations are really not, as the legislator had hoped, consistent and protective. They do a good job of limiting new ventures using hazardous materials. But unfortunately, there are
Excuse me, Ms. Miner.
Yeah, large major.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your 3 minutes have elapsed. If you could please summarize the remainder of your testimony.
Yes, I will. The activities you cannot prohibit include agriculture and residential uses that are not compensated. So I think that makes it clear that the protections are very incomplete. And I just want to jump to East Haddam and congratulate them on their grandmother, now famous, Doris Brown, age 106. So I will concede that it must be a very healthy place to live. And I love East Haddam. So that's the end of my prepared remarks.
Thank you very much. Is there a question or comment from the committee? I just wanted to clarify, you testified in favor of Senate Bill 1248, and is it against Senate Bill 1249?
Actually, 1248 was not so much for. I only had two choices. It's comments, and the comments are pretty much cuidado. This is very wet.
Fair enough. And you said, did you submit written testimony as well?
Yes, testimony on both. The major testimony being on the Cheshire on 1249.
Great. Thank you very much. Further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today and contributing your testimony. Next up is Representative Liz Linehan, followed by Representative Irene Haynes.
Hi, good morning, Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, and my friends and colleagues on the GAE committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I have no prepared remarks because I feel like I've been living this for the past X number of years and can talk off the cuff. So if there are any questions, please let me know. But this conveyance is actually an addendum to a conveyance that we did back in 2019, which was actually one of the newest ways that we've been doing conveyances, whereas the parcel of land was conveyed to Cheshire, but we're actually only acting as a pass-through entity. And when that area of land is sold off, that money goes back to the state of Connecticut because we're using this for economic development and possibly mixed use development. So to answer a question about the environmental impacts, this piece of land that we are asking to add on to the conveyance from 2019, it's a piece of land that's actually already in use through two state agencies. Those agencies have said, we don't need it. Go ahead and use it. And adding that onto the conveyance previously actually makes it much more desirable. But please keep in mind that because this is for the purposes of selling, all of this is going to go through our inlands and wetlands. It's going to go through all the permitting process that actually answers all of those concerns that were put forth to make sure that any permits moving forward to build on that land go through the process that is set up in the town of Cheshire. I know our Inlands and Wetlands Commission is extremely adept at making sure that we're not doing anything that would hurt the waterways or would actually have an negative environmental impact. But essentially what this does is just takes a very small strip of land and attaches it to the previous conveyance so that we, the town of Cheshire, I say we, but I mean the town of Cheshire, can actually develop this land for either commercial or mixed use development. And then again, send that money through to the state of Connecticut. And we're looking at possibly somewhere around a couple $1 million to go into the Special Transportation Fund. I hope you remember this conveyance previously. If you don't, I can answer any other questions, but this committee has always been fantastic in understanding the way we want to use this. So I thank you greatly, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Linehan. Do we have questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today.
Easy peasy. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Next up, we have Representative Irene Haynes, followed by Bishop W. Vance Cotton Sr.
Hello, good afternoon. Co-chairs Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, Ranking Member Senator Sampson, Representative Mastrofrancesco, and distinguished members of the Government Administration Elections Committee. I'm here to testify today on behalf of the town of East Haddam. I serve as the first selectman there. And we have a small, very small portion of land that has been a old road bed when the state came in and straightened out the road. It's actually Route 151, so it is a state road. However, we have a huge farm on one side and on the other side is basically vacant property. One of the interesting things about this is on the other side of this old rail or this road bed, which is pretty much a gully at this point, is a person in town who has a beautiful field that he wants to donate to the town and build a pavilion and barn for our farmers market. And because there are wetlands and because we've already had our inland wetlands people look at it, there is about a corner of the property that building needs to be into this conveyance piece of land that we're talking about today. So we're here to ask for that conveyance to happen because we want this farmers market to happen. It's going to be a community-wide opportunity for us, and we're looking forward to getting started. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you. I'm just gonna, how big is the property? It's very, very small, did you say?
It is. It's really the old road bed. It's less than an acre, and it's probably in its widest, it might be 20 feet, and its narrowest, it might be 5. It's kind of like a pie slice. And it literally is just, the road came out and curved out and back in. And so what they did is they straightened it. So there's this little strip. And like I said, most of it is probably a 3 foot by 2 feet deep drainage ditch for the old road. And the rest of it is just a little bit of a line of trees and I don't know, some stones maybe. I'm not sure there's nothing buildable on that. And, it has been maintained by the state at all. So it's really just a slice that are going to give us an opportunity to put a building in where we want to make sure that we are very cognizant of Mrs. Rivers wetlands.
Thank you. And it did go through your Inland Wetlands Commission already and it was approved.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Seeing no further comments. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next up is Bishop Vance, followed by Representative Zupkis, followed by Mayor Elicker. Bishop Vance, if you're with us. Yep, there you are. Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Bishop W. Vance Cotton Sr. I'm the CEO of Shiloh Community Development Corporation, which is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And I'm speaking on behalf of SB 1250. In 1991, God blessed me to become the pastor of Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church in Middletown, Connecticut. In 1992, God blessed me with the vision to build housing and an educational and multi-purpose center. But we did not own any land. We were only leasing approximately 2 acres for 100 years. In 1993, God blessed the vision that God gave me through our state legislature, and they conveyed 14 acres of prime land to Shiloh Baptist Church, which includes the 2 acre we were leasing, located on West Street and Butternut Street in Middletown, Connecticut. In 1996, Shiloh Manor, an elderly housing complex, moved from a vision to an actual living facility with 41 units sitting on approximately 2 acres of the 14 acres that the state conveyed to the church. In 2020, Shiloh CDC had the funding and the team in place to build, only to find out that the land we thought we owned for over 30 years was in question. The church even paid taxes on the land this year because the city had it on record that Shiloh CDC, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, owned the land but did not fill out the proper paperwork to keep the land from being taxed. It is now 2023 and Shiloh CDC has the opportunity to put another building on the land. We are thankful that the state has given us another chance to build on the land. This is why we're here today. We have a team in place and we will make sure that we follow the guidelines that the state has given us. The church has already given the land to a nonprofit, which is called the Shiloh Community Development Corporation, and it is a 501(c)(3). we are looking forward to completing the vision that was started in 1992. All right, God bless you.
Thank you very much, Bishop. Are there questions or comments from the community or committee, excuse me, Representative Mastrofrancesco?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. So are you saying that this land was conveyed over to the church years ago and there was a piece of it that was under question that was not? Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
No, the land was conveyed to us in 1992, I believe, 1992 or 1993. It was conveyed to us, and it was including the whole. It was including the whole 14 acres. We was already leasing 2 acres for 100 years. We were leasing it for 100 years. But when we went down, we asked the state to give us 14 acres of land, and they gave us they conveyed 14 acres of land to us, which was including the 2 acres that we already had.
So I thought I heard you mention something about paying taxes on a certain percentage of that.
Yes, we did. We paid taxes on, actually we paid taxes on the land, the 12 acres, 10 acres or 12 acres that's remaining.
Okay, and then the 2 acres, is it the 2 acres now that you're looking for to be conveyed?
No, the 2 acres is what we use for the church. That's the church. It had nothing to do with this land.
Okay, okay. Thank you for the clarification. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Representative Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions. Thank you, Bishop, for coming in to testify in the public hearing. You said that you were looking to build something on the land that is going to be conveyed. What is it that you're planning on building?
What's that? We're looking at building right now veteran houses. Veteran houses, and we're also looking at putting up a multi-purpose center and a something for our youth.
Okay, thanks for that. Has this land already been approved for building through the city of Middletown?
We haven't gotten that far yet. We was told in 2020 that we didn't own the land. And so that's why we had to stop everything and just wait till we got the that it looks like as it looks like we may be owning the land now, getting the land back.
Okay, and then one last question, Mr. Chair. Is this land sit on any kind of inland wetlands or anything like that?
No, this is prime land that the state has given to us.
It's what?
Prime land.
Oh, prime land. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cotton. Thank you for being here, for testifying. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today, Bishop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is Representative Zupkis, followed by Mayor Ellicott.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and ranking members and to the esteemed committee. Thank you for having us here. I am going just to give kudos to Representative Linehan. We're here on the same piece of legislation, but I'm going to pass my time over to Mr. Sean Kimball, who is the town manager of Cheshire. If you would allow me to, please.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, ranking members, and all distinguished committee members for allowing me to testify here today. I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 1249, an act conveying parcel of land to the town of Cheshire. This request involves about a 2.5 acre parcel of land located at 1996 Highland Avenue. This is adjacent, as was stated earlier, to approximately 58 acres that were previously conveyed in 2021, following approval by the General Assembly in 2019 as part of Special Act 19-4 for the purpose of marketing the entire property for economic development. All proceeds from the sale of that property will be remitted to the state treasurer for deposit in the Special Transportation Fund for the terms of the conveyance. The sale price of the 58 acres was to be and has been established as the average of 2 appraisals for the parcel. And those were recently completed and have been determined that the listed sale price, once an RFP is developed, is a little over $2 million. The town has determined that options for the development of this 58 acres would be greatly enhanced by the availability of this requested parcel. Conveyance of the parcel would not impact the current use of the property at 1996 Highland Avenue or the existing building, which is in use currently as offices of the State Inspector General. We have confirmed with both the Office of the Inspector General and the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection that this undeveloped area on the rear of the parcel is not in use and they have no future need for it. Both have stated their support for this conveyance. The town, per the original terms of 19-4, the town has 5 years to market the entire property from the time of the conveyance for economic development, and has formed a steering committee to develop a request for proposals for private development. As stated above, once sold for this purpose, the state stands to receive over $2 million for this conveyance. Furthermore, this would help generate significant job creation and economic growth for our town, for our region, and for the state as a whole. So in closing, I'd like to thank Representative Linehan and Representative Zupkis, as well as Senator Sampson, for moving our proposal forward and for your recognition and consideration of this conveyance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony and for coming in. How far, I'm curious, since the state conveyed the land over to Cheshire, how far along in the development is there? Has there been any?
Yeah, so
progress?
a steering committee has been formed. The conveyance was formalized in 2021 after all of the surveying and all of the other work was completed. But as part of our due diligence in anticipating the highest best use for the property, and again, with the steering committee that's been formed, it was determined that this parcel of land, this small area, I can actually hold up on the image here, this area here at the rear of 1996 Highland Avenue is really critical for that entire area, for really the 58 acres to be most effectively used. So the town has future desires to these last 2 parcels here are in private hands, and we would like to acquire those as well, but there wouldn't be any need to do so if we couldn't get this 2.5 acres from the state conveyed. So it really is kind of a linchpin to the whole site working most effectively.
And I'm just curious, what for the future, what do you see going forward? How long before all of that? Any estimate, any estimation?
I mean, there's certainly a lot of interest. The north part of Cheshire here, this is at the 691 intersection, just north, is an area the town has long sought as a wonderful opportunity for economic development. There's private development going in across the street across Route 10. And we know there's a lot of interest in this parcel as well. So we anticipate if we were able to get this 2.5 acres included in the overall parcel to be marketed, that within a year or so, we should have the RFP out and the responses received by the steering committee.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, it is certainly a high traffic area, certainly will help economic development. It really is a prime location.
It is.
Certainly will help the town. Thank you so much for coming in and for your testimony. Did you submit your testimony?
I
You
did.
mailed it
Also
and sent it
online,
in?
I did.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very
Thank
much for your
you.
time.
Next up is Mayor Elicker, followed by Eric Hammerling. Mayor Elicker, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thanks so much for having me, and also joined here by Alder Carmen Rodriguez. I'm going to try to be quick so I can leave her a little time at the end to speak. But Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, and members of the committee, we're here in support of HB 6939 that would convey 2 parcels, 60 Sergeant Drive and 0 Sergeant Drive, to the city of New Haven. really exciting opportunity as we reimagine the Long Wharf area of New Haven. We have over 500 new residential units going up at the Maritime Center, dramatic improvements to Long Wharf Park thanks to CIF investment from the state. Army Corps of Engineer, over $100 million coming in to protect this area from sea level rise. And today, the proposal in front of you is about conveyance of properties of the former Gateway site that will consolidate the 7-acre site into a larger approximately 20 plus acres around it to build infrastructure and support this campus-like environment. It's in partnership with state colleges and universities. We'd like to house an automotive school in partnership with them there. The Regional Water Authority is adjacent to the site. We're working with them on consolidated parking in a vision here. In addition, the App Foundation and potentially other development as well. One Long Wharf is the other parcel that's adjacent to the site, and we're trying to consolidate this all into a larger vision. All parties are excited about this. You have probably received testimony from Regional Water Authority, and we're working with state colleges and universities to come up with a pathway forward on automotive, but it's an exciting project. And with this parcel conveyed to the city, it really helps us activate this. Alder Rodriguez, you want to add some things here?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Elicker. I couldn't agree more with all the statements that the mayor made, and the residents are eager to see that a building that has sat derelict for several years become something of a moving environment. We're building the Long Wharf corridor, and so I ask you, Mr. Chair, and all members of the committee that this be conveyed to the city of New Haven. We'd like to see our Gateway corridor opened up. We'd like to see the school, Regional Water, the App Foundation, and many other entities that are really interested in our area. I'm very proud to serve this and the residents. So again, Mr. Chair and members, I look forward to excellent moving of this property so that we can build on it. Thank you all so much for hearing me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just for the transcript, it's Alderwoman Carmen Rodriguez of New Haven. Okay, so questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you both for being with us today. Oh, no, never mind, sorry. Don't go anywhere. Senator Flexer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you both for your testimony. I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about the specific program plans for the school and the expansion. I just want to understand that better because I think it connects to a conveyance we did a couple of years ago that closed down a program.
So I'm not familiar with the other parcel that you're talking about, but basically there is one Long Wharf Drive that is adjacent to these two parcels. That's the Gateway Community College old site there that is also adjacent to the Regional Water Authority site. And the Gateway building has been derelict for over 10 years. And what we want to do is envision all these sites together. It makes it a lot easier for us to do a joint design if we're looking at the sites and designing them together rather than individual parcel by parcel. Gateway has historically had an automotive school, I believe, in North Haven. And we, the city of New Haven and Gateway, Connecticut State College and Universities are interested in siting this school in New Haven. It's a good site for the region because it's close to the highway, but it's a great thing for New Haven as well because our residents will benefit from it. We're in conversations about some potential substitute language in the conveyance to ensure that state colleges and universities have some agreement with the city about how we enact this this automotive school on the site, but we're all kind of rowing in the same direction and really want the site to be located here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that answer. And is the automotive program functioning right now? Do you know?
I believe so, but that's a conversation for or a question for the state.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is my own personal experience. I've seen some opposition by state agencies that make decisions on how state property is used to the expansion of programs in some of our higher education institutions. So I guess the question I would have for you is what would the city do if this, what you hope to use this land for doesn't actually come to fruition?
Well, I would.
If that expansion of the program doesn't come to fruition.
Right. So I would be surprised if that's the case because we're seeing a pretty significant demand for this type of training in the state. And this training actually leads to really really good jobs as well. So the city's very, very invested in making this happen and wants to do so as well. The substitute language that we're working on for state colleges and universities has some checks and balances so that it protects both parties in case there's the possibility that something wouldn't happen. You know, the closing on the property is potentially a year or two out if presuming we move forward. And we would be spending the time, presuming the conveyance approval moves forward, making sure that there's a pathway to activate this before finalizing it entirely.
Okay, well, that's great. I would love to see the drafts of that language whenever you're able to share them.
As you can imagine, we're anxious to get it done too. So both sides have been doing a lot of back and forth right now about it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Flexer.
Thank you. Is there further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mayor Elicker and Alderwoman Rodriguez for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Eric Hammerling, followed by Larry Bingaman.
Good afternoon, co-chairs Flexer, Blumenthal, and esteemed members of the GIE committee. My name is Eric Hammerling, and I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Since our founding in 1895, CFPA has advocated to set aside iconic places for the public, such as Peoples and Goodwin State Forests, Rocky Neck, Penwood, Sherwood Island, Sleeping Giant, Talcott Mountain, and Gillette Castle State Parks, and many others. CFPA's long commitment to public lands is why we believe transparency is so important before public lands are conveyed. So I want to thank the committee for posting the applications and questionnaires of each conveyance on the GAE website far in advance of this public hearing. Your commitment to transparency has led to, in my estimation, higher quality proposals. And I only have a few specific suggestions for how the proposed conveyances in East Haddam and Cheshire can be improved. We support the goal in SB 1248 of conveying less than 1 acre of DOT property to East Haddam for a farmer's market. However, there is language in the bill that also places an arbitrary cap of $3,500 on the DOT's administrative costs. It's a standard provision in conveyance bills to require that a town pay for the administrative costs of a conveyance, especially when the town is also not paying fair market value to acquire the property. We would recommend removing the specific cap on administrative costs. The proposed conveyance in SB 1249 would convey a 2.5 acre forested parcel in Cheshire's northern drinking water well field to be sold by the town for economic development purposes. This site, as noted by Representative Linehan and Cheshire's town manager, is adjacent to another 58 acres or so, also in Cheshire's northern aquifer protection area that was conveyed previously for economic development purposes. Drinking water is one of our most important and limited resources, and economic development purposes, if implemented poorly, could compromise the quality of the drinking water well field. Respectfully, Cheshire should be more specific in its intentions for the future use of this land to ensure that drinking water quality is protected. We would encourage the committee to add protective language clarifying that future development of the site for economic development purposes would be subject to the review and approval of the town's Aquifer Protection Agency to ensure conformance with Cheshire's aquifer protection regulations. Specific language is suggested in my testimony and in that of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. And from what I've heard in testimony today, that should be compatible with what Cheshire leadership is looking for. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on these bills and for your ongoing commitment to transparency. I'd be glad to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hammerling. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you for your testimony. And I would just, if you wouldn't mind, it would be great if you have suggestions as to what that language should be, the language you just referenced that should be included in the Cheshire conveyance. That would be incredibly helpful so we could have a sense of what you think would be strong enough to provide the protections you're asking for.
Thank you, Senator Flexer, for the question. And I do have some suggested language in my testimony, and CLCC has it in theirs as well. And it seems as though the leadership in Cheshire is interested in doing the right thing here. But I think it's important, since the town is serving essentially as a pass-through of land to whomever might be developing it for economic development purposes, to ensure that it's very clear in the conveyance that the intention is not to harm the quality of the drinking water aquifer. So anyway, I appreciate the committee's interest in that specific point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there further questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Hammerling, I was just looking through your testimony. I didn't see specific language, but it appears that you basically recommend at the end that that the conveyance language be changed to require any development be subject to the review and approval of the town's Aquifer Protection Agency, of their Planning and Zoning Commission. Is that basically the full extent of your suggested edits?
Yeah, yes, it is. And thank you again for following up on that point.
Thank you very much. Further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today and contributing your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up is Larry Bingaman, followed by Kyrie Ambrosio. Mr. Bingaman, are you with us? Do not see you on the Zoom. All right, Ms. Ambrosio, you can go ahead whenever you're ready. I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
No problem. Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, and members of the Government Administration and Elections Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to have us testify here today in support of HB 6936, an act conveying parcels of state land to the New Haven Port Authority, HB 6937, an act amending a conveyance of state land to the New Haven Port Authority, and HB 6939, an act conveying parcels of state land to the City of New Haven. My name is Katie Ambrosio. I'm the Public Policy and Strategic Communication Specialist for the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce located here in New Haven. On behalf of the members of the Chamber, I'm testifying as an advocate for businesses across the Greater New Haven region. Our Chamber represents over 1,200 businesses across 15 municipalities in the region. Our mission is to be an advocate for business, a valuable resource for our members, a venue for connections, and a promoter of economic growth that is shared and inclusive. So as I mentioned, we are supportive of HB 6936 and HB 6937, both of which are conveyances for the New Haven Port Authority. We believe that the port is a driver to our economy. It enhances the economic competitiveness of the city, the Greater New Haven region, and of Connecticut. The port serves as a key connection to the transportation network that we have here in New Haven, and the port is critical in stimulating the shipment of freight and commerce that is necessary for our economy to thrive. We believe that the acquisition of the parcels of land by the Port Authority will allow them to better serve their mission, and it would be used by port operators, terminals, and others for the storage of freight, equipment, and goods. We believe that this is necessary to ensure that the port can continue their operations efficiently and continue to stimulate the local, regional, and state economy. We also support HB 6939, which would convey the parcels of state land to the City of New Haven and the city's Long Wharf District. The Long Wharf District is really an asset to the city and beyond. It offers a scenic waterfront, it's a popular food truck district, and many of our vital businesses are located in this district. There are currently 5,000 existing jobs located in the district, and with expansion plans, I think that is expected to expand by approximately 3,500 new jobs. So the district has a lot to offer, and it really does play a critical role in our economic development. As Mayor Elicker mentioned earlier, they're in the process of revitalizing the district, partnering with many of our members in the process, such as Regional Water Authority and Gateway Community College. And they have both been really great chamber partners with whom we have a very long-standing relationship to support the region's continued growth. There's also currently the opportunity to leverage the city's recent allotment of the $12.1 million from the Community Investment Fund. And there are other additional state and federal grants that we believe that this conveyance is critical to the city's future plans to revitalize the district with mixed-use development that attracts visitors, employees, and businesses and benefits the local community. So again, on behalf of our members, we ask you to support these 3 conveyance bills in New Haven, and we look forward to working with you on this and other important issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ambrosio. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thanks for being with us today and for contributing your testimony. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Next up, do we have Larry Bingaman joining us? I do not see him in the Zoom. All right. Moving on. Next up is Jonathan Cotton, followed by Michael Piscitelli. Mr. Cotton with us. There he is. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Cotton, you may begin.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to the GAE committee. My name is Jonathan Cotton. I'm the president of the Shiloh Baptist Community Development Corporation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. I would like to start by saying that we are extremely thankful and excited to be on the verge of breaking ground on further development of the land that was conveyed to us by the state. We have been working tirelessly to acquire funding so that we will be able to put buildings and create programs that will be of service to the community. We currently have a 41-unit elderly housing called Shiloh Manor, along with a resource center, which is currently in the lower level of our church. We are feeding approximately 150 families a month at no cost to the families. Our programs are currently being held in the lower level of Shiloh Baptist Church, and we have outgrown that space due to the demands of the community at large. Post-COVID, everything that our resource center was offering has more than doubled in demand. We have offered pilot programs to create a snapshot of the needs of our community, and they have responded with a resounding yes. In closing, we are anticipating receiving the land back and looking forward to building. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. Have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Cotton. Are there questions or comments from the committee? I am seeing Representative Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cotton, for coming in. I have a couple of quick questions. The youth activities that the former Mr. Cotton talked about, what kind of activities are you planning on building? Is it going to be a teen center or anything like that?
So I think the goal is, I mean, we don't have anything specific as of right now because we're still trying to, get this part situated as far as the land. But we have had conversations, but nothing's been kind of locked in regards to exactly specific plans for the youth. We've had other programs previous to COVID, but we haven't really spoken about future things and locked anything into place.
Okay, great. Through you, Mr. Chair, I did look quickly at the testimonies that were sent in, and I believe it's Bill 1250. There is some testimony that has been sent in opposition to you guys as the church getting the property. Do you know why that is? I didn't get it. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get a chance to read it yet.
No, I do not know.
All right, so there is quite opposition that was sent in writing to the GAE committee to this, to the church getting the property. I will get a chance to read it sometime today, but I just wanted to know if you knew why. I don't know if it's the neighbors. I thought you might know why there was opposition.
No, that's news to me.
Oh, okay. If you get a chance, go into the GAE testimonies, and it's on the website, on the GAE website, and look at those oppositions. There was quite a few testimonies that were sent in opposition to this conveyance. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cotton. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for Mr. Cotton for being with us today. Next up is Michael Piscitelli, followed by Ron Pacaccia.
Over the years for that. By way of background, this relates to our implementation of the Long Wharf Responsible Growth Plan. It's a plan that was approved by the Board of Alders a couple of years ago, both in terms of coastal resiliency as well as economic growth. The Long Wharf area was part of the urban renewal redevelopment of New Haven. So it's been some time since we've done a full revitalization of this district. And it's well underway. With your support and with some federal grants, we've been able to attract about $200 million in investment, which will build a new flood wall, a stormwater park, a new pipe, as well as really transform Long Wharf Park, which Katie mentioned earlier. And it's not just for economic growth, it really protects the entire district. So this is the rail yard, this is I-95. There's a reason and a real economic basis on a national level as to why Long Wharf is so important. And as the mayor mentioned, the area around Gateway Community College is of particular significance. So the college building, if you can think of it, is it's right next to Jordan's Furniture. There's a city street, and then it's a lot of parking. And all of our partners in this area are looking to both reimagine the district and deal with the flood zone issues and the end of the useful life of existing buildings. So the Gateway Community College originally thought maybe we can redo that building in some fashion, but the building is at the end of its useful life and it's physically attached to the Regional Water Authority. So we've been working with both the Water Authority and with Gateway, since both buildings will likely need to come down, and we're budgeting for that. And then to rebuild both a campus and operations center for the Water Authority. And then, as the mayor mentioned, to really support the transportation and automotive uses proposed by Gateway Community College. And then over time, there are other phases of this project. So APT, Gateway, and the Water Authority would be in phase 1. And then we hope to unlock a second phase, which would be to expand the medical campus in the back, where we have a number of patient care facilities, and that would unlock additional economic opportunity, again, fully reimagine the area as a more contemporary economic park. That in total is about 500,000 square feet of new development. And as mentioned earlier, we envision the entire district to create another 3,500 jobs, retaining the 5,000 jobs that are there. And then I would close just by, in your support for this, know it is in context with our other partnerships. So the city and the state worked together on Downtown Crossing when we took out Route 34, which unlocked the bioscience sector right in the heart of the city. Some may also recall District, which is at 470 James Street, the Innovation Center, the co-work facility, was the old Connecticut Transit bus barn. And then also, I think we should add the move of Gateway Community College about 10 years ago was also a city and state partnership where we worked with the state. We tore down the old Macy's building, supported the parking by using the Temple Street garage. And then we're able to build and welcome Gateway Community College downtown, again, through pairing our resources and making it work both on the local level and with the state. So I'll close with that, knowing that Long Wharf is really the next big area for us to focus, in part because of the urgency of the coastal resiliency efforts and the need of our partners, Gateway, the Regional Water Authority, APT. These are near-term opportunities, and we're looking to support those with your support. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions or comments from the committee? My only question would be, I may have my geography off a little bit, but would this affect in any way the congregation of food trucks? by the water
So,
there.
No, it's okay. Everybody asks. And that's, it's part of the real joy of Long Wharf is to have, the experiences, right? The food trucks are actually located, on the other side of the highway, on the water side. As part of the grant that with your support was just approved through the Community Investment Fund, that will be reimagined. So we'll transform the entire area, slow the street down, build new, but all of the food trucks we anticipate staying, with electric plug-ins, more facilities for people to actually take the food and actually go sit under a covered structure. So we're excited by where that goes over the next couple of years.
Well, thank you very much. That's good news to hear. Any further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Ron Pacacha, followed by Alan Ruiz.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Senator Flexer. I trust you can hear me.
Yep, you're a little murky, so if you could get a little closer to your computer, maybe.
Okay. I'm here to speak about House Bill 6935. It involves a 1 acre piece of property. Just to put it in context, it's near the Bass Pro Shops and another large development on the waterfront in Bridgeport near exit 30. We commonly refer to this as a triangle because it is a triangle in shape. Bass Pro Shops is using this site now as a winter boat storage area. So it is very critical to the development of the Bass Pro site and the surrounding 50 acres of waterfront development in Bridgeport. This site was previously taken by the state of Connecticut to, in connection with the realignment of exit 30 in Bridgeport. And it was reconveyed to the Bridgeport Port Authority for use as economic development or water-related purposes. And it has always been used for that purpose since the original conveyance. The Bass Pro Shops, which is using the site now, it is important to the state and to the city of Bridgeport. The state DECD has contributed in excess of $23 million to the development of this site. There's $11 million in federal highway funding that was put into this site to develop Stratford Avenue. There's another $9 million in Connecticut Development Authority funding and $23 million more in state sales tax TIF funding. So this parcel is very important to the economic development of the area. We have always abided by the DOT's requirement that we use this property for economic development. What has happened over time is that at first the Port Authority asked for the property to be transferred to it, and it didn't also get the right to sell or lease the property to any other developer. So when a developer came along and said they wanted to lease the property, this required us to go back to the legislature and have a special act passed that would allow the leasing of the property. Subsequent to that event, the developer then asked for the property to be sold to to sell it to another developer. So we had to come back for a second special act to get that authority. In the meantime, the Port Authority had already entered into a development agreement that fixed the value of each acre of property at $100,000. So we were locked into an LDA and required to sell at that price. Now, we have gone back and forth with the state DOT as to how we would pay for the property and by what method. And there's been some confusion about that because the prior special act required that we pay fair market value for it. And of course, that presented a potential problem because the property had been developed, permitted, and developed for Bass Pro Shops. So we felt that there was a need for a request to the legislature again to have the property has already been transferred from the Port Authority to a developer. but we wanted to fix the purchase price rather than an appraised value, fix it at the price that the Port Authority had been paid for it, which is $100,000 an acre. So this special act, this House bill, would correct the amount that the Port Authority would have to pay for it, and it would be the equivalent of what the Port Authority has received for this parcel. But it corrects a long history of back and forth and differing needs in connection with the dynamic development of not only this Steel Point property, but a large, approximately 30-acre parcel of which this triangle is a part. So that's the reason for the House bill, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for your testimony. I just had a couple quick questions for clarification. The sale price, the fair market value that in the bill calls for $119,000. And I thought you had mentioned that they paid, they allocated $100,000.
Yes, but the property is slightly larger than an acre, and it's, I don't know if interest or cost of living is in the price, but $119,000 seems like a fair value to pay for the property.
Okay, so you're not looking for the property to be fair market value to be 100,000, as you mentioned. You're okay with the 119,000 that is in the legislation before us.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarifying that. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Representative McCarthy Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony today. I am not certain, my question is actually, have you submitted your testimony in writing? And I don't see it, but I just wanted to confirm if that was the case.
Yes, I didn't realize that I could present testimony in writing, and was asked maybe a week ago if I could testify instead of my client who was away on vacation at the time. So I did not submit written testimony.
If you are able to do so and willing, I think that would be wonderful, just for the record. Thank you.
I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, Representative. And yes, we do always welcome written testimony, and the deadline is not the hearing. You can submit written testimony after the hearing. So Mr. Procaccia, if you have the opportunity, please do so. Are there any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today. Next up is Alan Ruiz, followed by a group of individuals, Sally Cruz, Nick Fabiani, Patricia DeLeo, and Carolyn Cohn. So Mr. Ruiz, if you're with us, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
I am, thank you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Alan Ruiz. I'm a senior associate in the Hartford office of Day Pitney, which is a law firm, and I've been assisting the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church and its affiliated entities, some of whom we've already heard from this afternoon, pro bono in connection with title issues related to their proposed development and the land that's subject to proposed Bill SB 1250, which I am testifying in support of. I want to thank the Government Administration and Elections Committee for this opportunity to speak and to hear the testimony from myself and the rest of the Shiloh team. I want to thank the Middletown delegation of the General Assembly, in particular Senator Lesser and Representative Chaffee, for their assistance with this legislative process, and all of their teams as well. And I want to thank the Attorney General's office, and especially Assistant Attorney General Bauza for her assistance thus far. Like I said, I of course support this legislation. I have been assisting Shiloh pro bono throughout this process, and I look forward to continuing to help them develop this land and provide additional communities, facilities, and support for the public on top of their many ongoing efforts, again, some of which we've heard about earlier this afternoon. I would just like to touch briefly on the history of the site. I can provide some clarifying answers to some of the questions that various committee members have asked to the Shiloh folks that testified earlier. This land was previously conveyed by the state to Shiloh, and the purpose of this legislation is simply to clarify certain deed restrictions in the original granting legislation and the deed that ensued, which will benefit both Shiloh and the state, principally by setting forth a development deadline that'll bolster the state's reverter right and give the Shiloh development team and other public stakeholders clearer title and a final milestone development. All of this is within the spirit of the original legislation and existing deed. The language of SB 1250 largely mirrors that existing legislation. And so I hope this committee will agree. And I'm available to discuss any questions as needed, including those that may have been asked by earlier committee members. I do, before turning the floor over, just want to note quickly that I took a quick glance at the committee's website when I heard that there was some written testimony provided in opposition to this legislation. I haven't had a chance to read each and every one of those thoroughly since that was mentioned, but it does look like most of the opposition comes from neighbors along West Street in Middletown. It looks like a decent number of family members, I assume the Oresco family, who many of whom live either along West Street, it appears, or in a cul-de-sac aptly named Oresco Drive, seem to oppose the development. They have some loose concerns about traffic. They want to preserve the vacant land for natural development. And to the first point, I would say traffic studies, that can all be addressed at the municipal level when Shiloh proceeds with their development, which can't occur until this title issue is clarified by this legislation. And natural space is, of course, something that we all prioritize, but the state already granted this land to Shiloh for the development that's proposed. So I think the General Assembly many years ago, and hopefully in this session, will agree that this land can serve a higher purpose being developed with the community facilities that Shiloh is contemplating. And now I'll turn it over further to any other questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. I'm just curious. The land currently right now did belong to the Shiloh Baptist Church. And in the language of the bill, it says that it's now the Shiloh Baptist Community Development Corporation. So is this no longer in the hands of a church, but in a corporation that's owned by the church?
Yes, an affiliated entity. The Shiloh Development Community Corporation is, as we've heard previously, a 501c3. It's a development corporation that was established to be the title holding entity and the developing entity. The original granting legislation conveyed it to the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. One requirement of that original legislation was that it then be conveyed to a development corporation. That's already occurred, so that's why this new legislation writes in the development corporation already.
Okay, thank you. And then when it was originally conveyed, it was, I believe, 1992.
This was actually 1998 was when the deed in response to this specific legislation was recorded. That's probably the operative date to keep in mind. There was a little bit of mix up in the previous testimony. There's actually been two separate conveyances. The 2 acres that Bishop Cotton mentioned earlier are developed with the church, the Parsonage House, and Shiloh Manors, that existing veteran housing. That was conveyed in the 1992 legislative session. Then a separate 10 acres, which is the subject of this legislation, was conveyed originally by special act in 95, and then amended in the special act in 96, and again recorded in 1998. There's been 2 separate conveyances.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more follow-up question. When I'm looking at the language before us in the bill, it says not later than it was 5 years after the effective date of the section. And now that is no longer. So between when that conveyance occurred and when that was effective until now. Did all of those years pass and nothing happened?
Well, yes and no. So first I want to just address the 5 years. The 5-year deadline was worded in a way that we think applied only to the conveyance to the Development Corporation, which, as I mentioned, happened, and that happened within that 5-year deadline. The original legislation was a little unclear on when that the development itself had to be constructed. And so one benefit of SB 1250 is that there is now a clear deadline of June 30th, 2028, if I recall correctly. And then that's what I mentioned earlier as one of the benefits the state will receive is a reverter right with a clear deadline. There wasn't one in the original legislation. In a general sense, I think what you're asking is, has nothing happened to the land since 1998? And that's correct. For a couple of reasons. I think there was that development, the Shiloh Manors in the original 2 acres, was thought to have satisfied both deeds, both of the 2 separate conveyances obligations. Now that the church has realized that there were 2 separate conveyances, there needs to be 2 separate developments, Shiloh Manors satisfying similar deed restrictions in the conveyance of the 2 acres. They've begun moving forward with this 10-acre development. Now, it hasn't been exactly from 1998 till May 8th, 2023. As we heard from Bishop Cotton, there have been some attempts to obtain building permits and move the process forward with the municipal government, but they took a look at the land records, saw this unclear reverter right in the original legislation, and long story short, caused this reanalysis and renewed legislative process. So that's been several years, took up several years of the past several years.
So thank you for that answer. So over the past 20 years, the problem has been with the land records. Is that correct? And that's why they were unable to develop it?
Well, I would say that the current existing deed doesn't set forth a development timeline. So I would argue that there is no violation of the development timeline, but we would like to create one for everyone's benefit. I wouldn't describe that as a defect in the land records necessarily, or the sole reason that there was no development. It's partially also that there were 2 separate conveyances, one for the 2 acres upon which compliant development of the Shiloh Manors that we heard about earlier was completed, and then this current vacant 10-acre parcel that, unbeknownst to Shiloh for part of that time, also had similar deed restrictions. Again, with no timeline, for the development, but with similar ultimate development requirements as the 2 acres upon which Shiloh Manors is built.
Okay. Thank you so much for the clarification. I appreciate it. I have no more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Next up, Representative Santiago has questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz, for being here today to testify for the 1250, SB 1250. I did get a chance in between your testimony and the other testimony to read the opposition, some of them. I counted them, there's 26 oppositions to this request. And they are talking about traffic concerns, as you mentioned. There's a lot of environmental concerns. And also in reading one of them, they said there was a plan also to put a school there with 1,000 kids. So maybe that might have been some of the youth activities that were being mentioned before. But I would suggest that that you would again read those, and the Cotton family, the Shiloh Church, to read those oppositions. It's not just from the Oresco family, but there are some other neighbors there. And they're also citing that there's a disabilities housing nearby, and there's also a small building. So I haven't had a chance to read all of them, but it's pretty interesting. So thank you for coming to testify today. I really don't have a question, but in reading this, there are 26 oppositions to this conveyance. And I've been on this committee for a very, very long time, and I've never seen that many oppositions to a conveyance from the state to a private entity. So, and I wish you luck and thank you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Santiago. I understand you weren't asking a question, but I did just want to touch in response and perhaps rebut some of this opposition. Like you, I did have a chance to look through some of them. You reminded me of some of the details. It does seem like some of those opposed may be mistaken. I don't know why. I don't know where they got the idea of a charter school, of an educational facility. I think they're making these numbers up, about 900, 1,000. I saw each of those numbers referenced in various oppositions. As we heard from the previous testimony, the idea for what will be built on this land is currently very loose. There's options, but I don't think that there's anything quite as specific as a charter school, a middle school, 900 students, 1,000 students. Again, I respectfully, I don't know where these neighbors got this information, but I have a sense that it might be a little fictitious. And as you noted, they are neighbors. I did happen to see that many of them are that family I mentioned, but I took a look and it does seem like most of them are along West Street or cul-de-sacs adjacent there too. So it seems like it's very localized and folks that just want to keep their, as you mentioned, the environmental concerns, keep this piece of land vacant, which is not what the state wanted 20 years ago. And I think that we can serve the community better by building something on it. It's 10 acres, so it's rather large. Perhaps we can, consider some sort of parks or other facilities that preserve some sort of open space. Again, there isn't any concrete plans, and so the Shiloh team is available to work with all public stakeholders, neighbors, and municipal officials as well in seeing the development through.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ruiz, I didn't mention charter schools, you did. So, and some of the oppositions that were stated were from some people that were against the charter school, but I didn't mention it. So again, thank you for being here today. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for having the opportunity to talk on this conveyance bill.
Sure. I just wanted to mention things I had seen separately. I didn't mean to put words in your mouth about your description of their opposition, but appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz and Representative. Are there further questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you for being with us today and for contributing your testimony. Next up is a group from the New Haven Port Authority led by Sally Cruz and Nick Babiani, followed by, followed by Amy Blaymore Patterson, followed by Senator Matt Lesser. So Ms. Cruz and Babiani, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairs Flexer and Blumenthal and esteemed members of the committee.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Cruz. Something appears to be wonky with your sound.
Can you understand me now?
It's something is going on with the sound. Sounds kind of like you're underwater. I don't know if you have another microphone you can use, or perhaps you can try logging out and logging in again. It might be the Zoom. There we go.
Okay. Is this better?
Try again.
Yes, now.
No, I'm sorry. We can't really understand you right now.
Okay.
You know what? Why don't you try logging off and logging back in again? We'll have the next person go first, and then we'll go back to you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Ms. Patterson, whenever you are ready, you may begin.
I'm set. Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Unclear.
Thank you very much. Although being underwater is kind of a good description of how I'm feeling today. So thank you. For the record, I'm Amy Blaymore Patterson. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. Senator Flexer, Representative Blumenthal, and distinguished members of the GAE committee, thank you for this opportunity to present testimony today and allowing me to slip in here at the end. I first want to thank the committee and the staff for posting the questionnaires and related information regarding each of the proposed conveyance bills well in advance of today's public hearing. Having access to that information provides greater transparency and an opportunity for informed public input. And it really allowed CLCC to more narrowly tailor our testimony to the issues that are most relevant to our mission. And so to that end, I submitted written comments related to two bills, SB 1148, the conveyance in East Haddam, and SB 1149 in Cheshire. And with them, the common concern being impacts of the future activity on the natural resources on the respective properties. Throughout this legislative session, almost without exception, CLCC's testimony on a myriad of bills has emphasized the critical importance of natural and working lands and the role that they play in mitigating the impacts of climate change, absorbing and storing dangerous greenhouse gases, halting and alarming and unprecedented loss of biodiversity, keeping our air and water clean, among a myriad of other benefits to our health and economy. And no matter the size and location of the property, we need to be focused on capturing the value of these ecosystem services when evaluating the overall value of land and the impacts of any proposed development activities on those values. And this should always be the case, but it is especially important where there are regulations in place that are intended to protect those resources, as is the case with inland wetlands and watercourses, aquifer protection areas, among others. So to that end, we strongly urge the committee to condition approvals of the conveyances, like those proposed in SB 1248 and 1249, on the review and approval of the local land use commission, with relevant jurisdiction over the resources that will be impacted by the development activities. I did have an opportunity to listen to the testimony and noted that Representative Linehan had noted that with respect to East Haddam, which, by the way, with that end use, of course, we have no objection. It sounds like a terrific project to have that farmers market, but it was more about the impacts on the wetlands. And I did note, I did want to acknowledge that she noted that wetlands had reviewed it. I don't know if it went through public hearing, if it raised to that level, but I did want to acknowledge that I did hear that from her, and I appreciate that. SB 1249 with respect to Cheshire and the aquifer protection area, again, we would ask that if the proposal is the conveyance is going to be approved, that it be conditioned on the review and approval of the local land use commission, which in that case would be the Aquifer Protection Agency that's run through the Planning and Zoning Commission, and to be sure that that the regulations are going to be met and that any conditions would be placed on that application to protect the APA as much as possible. So thank you very much for the opportunity to weigh in here, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being with us. We're going to try one more time with Ms. Cruz. Is she back yet? Looks like she's still logging back on. Why don't we'll have Senator Lesser go, and then we'll go back to the Port Authority group. And then Mr. Bingaman, I see you're with us. You'll be closing us out today.
Good afternoon, Representative Blumenthal, Senator Flexer, Representative Mastro Francesco, and members of the GAE committee. I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 1250. That's the Middletown conveyance. I did have the opportunity to review to watch the testimony this afternoon, as well as to review the written testimony submitted, and I'm happy to really focus my testimony on just answering some questions that the committee might have about this. I would just say this isn't different from a normal conveyance because this isn't a new idea. This is a conveyance that was originally approved by the legislature as far back as 1992, and then there was a very long legislative history, sort of a convoluted process in the 90s when this thing went forward. What we're simply doing today is to clear up some title questions and to validate it, to address the questions about the conveyance in the 90s. So this is not a new proposal. We're just validating the existing proposal. We did get some commentary from neighbors with concerns. These are principally traffic concerns, and I think they're important to look at. And so I just think that some of the confusion, there was some language added here that sort of changes the scope of what's permitted. Originally in the 90s, the scope was really limited to moderate income housing. I think it's probably wise to just keep that scope as is and not seek to expand the potential scope of the conveyance, because I think that seems to be where a lot of the neighborhood concerns come from. And then just allowing the existing language to go forward, I think would address perhaps not all of those concerns, but I think the majority of them. And I think that's largely it. I would just say, and I don't think this should impact how you see this. The member of our delegation who's really carrying water, working with Bishop Cotton and the folks over at Shiloh was Representative Williams. And this was something I know was very important to him before his passing. The rest of the delegation has picked it up, and we're hoping to work with you on language and hopefully get some, to a resolution that works for the neighborhood, but also allows Shiloh to work with the land that is theirs by act of the legislature in the 90s, and hopefully they can move forward with the projects that Bishop Cotton mentioned earlier. And with that, I'll just welcome any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in and for clarification. So I'm just curious. In the original, when it was originally pad, it was really for housing. And
That's right.
now that's changed to other scientific, literacy, historical, agriculture, charitable.
Mhm.
Are you suggesting that they take that out and revert it back to the way it was? And then I'm curious why it was taken out and this new language was put in. Do you have any insight or background of the thought is?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. I was asking that question of LCO, and the answer that I received was that was actually Representative Williams who suggested that language change. So unfortunately, he's not here to answer that question. But I think the most important thing in my conversations with the church are that they be able to keep their land. And now that question has been raised, that's a real problem. So I don't know, going beyond the original scope of that, how important that is. But I do think that's raised some of the community concerns, because now you saw that testimony about a school or other purposes. I didn't hear that as something that the church is interested in doing, and I'm worried that change may have opened the door to people thinking, well, what's the parade of horribles? What could happen in our neighborhood? And I don't think I don't hear that as being the intent here.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and I'm just curious, and I probably should have asked the people from the church if they were okay with if the language was changed, going back to what it was, if they were okay with that. Yeah, I think there could be some confusion with the neighbors as to what, and rightfully so. I mean, people want to know exactly what you're going to use the land for, and it's kind of vague in here, so I can certainly understand it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Representative.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any further question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, I would just say we'd welcome if you want to. It sounds like you are taking the lead on, at least from the legislative side, some of this. If you want to confer with the church and see what sort of language limitations they would be amenable to, that would probably be helpful, and we'd welcome it as a committee.
I'll certainly do that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, hopefully we fixed sound issues for the New Haven Port Authority group. Ms. Cruz, whenever you're ready.
Okay, is this better?
Much better.
Different computer. If I appear to be looking down, it's because I'm using a laptop. Good afternoon, co-chairs Flexer and Blumenthal and esteemed members of the committee. I'm Sally Cruz, and I'm the executive director of the New Haven Port Authority. And I'm here to testify in support of House Bills 6936 and 6937, which are conveyances of land from DOT to the New Haven Port Authority. I'm joined by our board chair, Nick Fabiani, and by our attorney, Patricia DeLeo, who will be available to answer questions, but I will take the lead on testifying. Carolyn Cohn registered, but she has jury duty, so she will not be joining us. Speaking on behalf of the Board of Commissioners of the Port Authority, we're delighted to have the opportunity to acquire these properties from DOT. Successful port facilities depend on adequate land supply to meet existing and future business needs. However, land in New Haven's port is very constrained. The state of Connecticut had Moffett and Nickel do a Connecticut Deepwater Port Strategy Study, and that identified land availability in New Haven as a weakness for the port. And while that report was dated 2012, this remains true today. Since I became the executive director, port authorities and others are actively seeking to expand their businesses in the port area. And, we are looking forward to working with them to help them expand their businesses in New Haven, expanding jobs, expanding taxes, and expanding the regional economy. I do want to say that we are aware that DOT submitted some changes to the language in the bill, and we are completely supportive of those changes. They were developed in conjunction with our team. I'm available for questions, as is the rest of my team, but I would end right now with just saying thank you very much for considering this and for hearing me.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Next and last up on our list is Larry Bingaman. Mr. Bingaman, whenever you're ready, you can continue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Larry Bingaman, and I am the president and CEO of the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, also known as the RWA. Our mission is to provide our nearly 430,000 consumers with high-quality water at a reasonable cost while promoting the conservation of watershed lands and aquifers. I'm here today to support House Bill 6939, an act conveying parcels of state land to the city of New Haven. Since the founding of our predecessor company, the New Haven Water Company, almost 175 years ago, the RWA has called New Haven home. As part of the RWA's long-standing commitment to the greater New Haven region, we proudly serve nearly 23,000 New Haven water consumers and maintain our corporate headquarters at 90 Sergeant Drive. We strongly support House Bill 6939 because it pertains to our immediate neighbor, 60 Sergeant Drive. We believe that conveying the parcel located at 60 Sergeant Drive to the city of New Haven for a proposed redevelopment plan that will center on innovation and technology, as outlined by Mayor Elicker and Mr. Piscatelli, is in the best interest of the city, the greater New Haven community, and the property owners located in the Long Wharf area. The city of New Haven and the Long Wharf community are embarking on a promising and exciting revitalization plan, which would also benefit the RWA and its customers by providing amenities for our employees, thereby improving employee recruitment and enhancing the prospects for the redevelopment of our headquarters at 90 Sergeant Drive. Consequently, the RWA wholeheartedly supports House Bill 6939 and the growth of the Long Wharf district that will enrich the community, neighbors, and businesses. We firmly believe this property conveyance will be a critical first phase to supporting local inclusive economic growth and providing the Long Wharf area with significant multi-use development opportunities to better serve the community. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to hearing any comments, questions, or concerns that the committee members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any question or comment from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Bingaman, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to testify at this hearing? Anyone else here to testify? Seeing no further witnesses, I declare this hearing of the Government Administration and Elections Committee closed. Thank you to everyone who was with us today.